Flossenburg Concentration Camp is located in Germany near the border of the Czech Republic. It's about a 2.5-hour drive from Prague and about a 1.5-hour drive from Nuremberg. Flossenburg was in operation from 1938 until April 23, 1945, when it was liberated by American troops. Similar to Mauthausen concentration camp in Austria, many of the men at Flossenburg were made to work in quarries. In this present-day aerial view, you can see Flossenburg Concentration Camp is located here. You can also see nearby quarries here and here. This quarry is sometimes known as Castle Hill because at the top of it are the remains of the Flossenburg Castle. You can see it in the background of this picture and what it looks like today. In this aerial view, we've zoomed into the main camp area. This is where the main gate would be, separating the SS side of the camp to the left from the prisoner side of the camp to the right. This building was the SS canteen, and this was the SS headquarters building. Barracks for the SS would run along here, and prisoner barracks would run along here and here. This building was the laundry building, and this was the kitchen building. You may have noticed that I said the barracks were up here where these houses are. In the 1950s, people built residential houses where part of the camp once stood. So the backyards of these houses literally overlook a concentration camp. And if you look right here, where this blue star is, you can see that a residential road literally crosses through the concentration camp. Of the 17 concentration camps I visited thus far, I've never seen a layout like this. This map near the entrance to the camp shows Flossenburg's main camp here, which is where we are, and all of these other red squares are the location of Flossenburg's subcamps. There were around 80 of them. This map shows Flossenburg here, and the numbers represent the inmates' country of origin, which you can see stretches from Finland to Portugal to Turkey. From the map, you can see that a majority of Flossenburg's inmates came from Russia and Poland. In this view, I'm walking from the parking lot up to the entrance of the camp. This building to the left was the SS canteen, and the building straight ahead was the SS headquarters building for the camp. In this picture, you can see these houses where people live today that literally borders the grounds of the concentration camp. Now we'll go through this arch of the former SS headquarters building. Today it serves as the Memorial's administration building. We've passed through the arch and are heading to this area where the gate to the prisoners' camp is. But first, we have to cross that residential street that cuts through the camp. In the distance, we can see the camp kitchen building and laundry building. One gate separates two completely different worlds. With one step, we now enter the prisoners' camp. After crossing into the prisoners section, we look left and we see this view. Where all of these houses are, prisoner barracks once stood. Ahead is the camp kitchen building, which now contains exhibits. Looking to our right, we see the camp laundry building, which now houses exhibits. All of this grassy area once contained prisoner barracks. In between the camp kitchen and laundry building is this big open area. This was the roll call square. We'll start by taking a look in these two buildings. Try to make a mental note of this part of the map because on an upcoming slide, we'll see the remains of a tunnel, an underground tunnel, that runs under the roll call square connecting these two buildings. We'll enter the camp laundry building first. On this sign it reads, "The SS and capos herded the prisoners into the laundry basement. The new arrivals had to remove their clothing. Their clothing and personal items were taken from them. Then they had to stand and wait, naked, until other prisoners had shaved their heads and bodies. The inmates were supposed to lose all sense of personal identity. The SS and capos insulted, beat, and tortured the inmates in the prisoners' washroom. The water from the showers was often boiling hot or much too cold. The hard jet of water from the high-pressure hose was extremely painful. Some prisoners were forced to stand naked and wet for hours, or to stand outdoors on the roll call square. From the moment of their arrival in the camp, their daily experience became a matter of life and death. Anyone who survived the abuse had to put on the striped prisoner clothing with a number and a colored triangle. Afterwards, the inmates were assigned a block. From that point on, the people no longer had names. They were only numbers. The shaded rooms on the map show us what part of the laundry building we're in. Located in this area is the changing room and the disinfection unit for delousing prisoner clothing. Next, we go into the barber room. In this room, the heads and bodies of the inmates were shaved by other prisoners. Here's another changing room. In this room, clothing and valuables were turned in. Next, we move into this large area on the map, the prisoners' washroom. You can see from this photo taken in 1945 after liberation, the shower room looks practically unchanged, except the shower heads have been removed. This area of the laundry building contains the permanent exhibition called Flossenburg Concentration Camp, 1938 to 1945. It gives a historical overview on this upper level, and in a minute we'll go down to the lower level. About halfway down this wall, there is a hole in the wall, and we'll take a closer look at that on the next slide. Looking through that hole in the wall, we see this tunnel. If you remember from one of the earlier slides where I asked you to make a mental picture of the map, you'll recall that the tunnel runs under the roll call square, connecting the laundry building and the kitchen building. The tunnel also connects to the camp headquarters building. Visitors don't have access to this tunnel, but you can see that it looks like the tunnel branches right here, and it may branch at other points as well. Here on the lower level is an exhibit describing the fate of some of the individual survivors from various inmate groups. I've included at the bottom of the screen, if you would like to read more about any of their biographies, if you go to the Flossenburg Memorial official webpage, click on the History tab, and then click on Prisoners, and then you can read their biographies. Now we'll cross over to the camp kitchen building to look at a few items in another exhibit. Here you see artifacts including prisoners' shoes, a striped jacket, and a tin cup, bowl, and spoon. The Nazis considered the inmates as subhuman and not deserving of being referred to by name, so they were assigned numbers instead. Sometimes you may come across the letters KZ before the name of a concentration camp. For example, KZ Flossenburg. KZ is an abbreviation for the German spelling of concentration. So in English, we spell concentration C-O-N-C, but in the German spelling, it's K-O-N-Z. So the KZ is the abbreviation. As you can see on this license plate, the survivor personalized his plate with the KZ and then his former prisoner's number. You may recall from one of the maps at the beginning of this presentation that Flossenburg had numerous subcamps. One of the subcamps was located in Nuremberg, Germany. This piece of artwork depicts female inmates during an air raid at the Nuremberg subcamp. The sign mentions that survivor Magda Watts made the dolls when she was in the Nuremberg subcamp. It also says that she would exchange these dolls for food, and that today she works through her memories by creating scenes from the concentration camp. Now we'll move from the kitchen and laundry buildings over to this grassy area where prisoner barracks once stood. And if you recall, the prisoner barracks used to extend all the way over here to where these houses are now. You can envision this as one continuous view. So let's pan from right to left. To the right, we see the laundry building. And as we pan left, we see these markers in the ground, indicating where row after row of barracks would have stood. To the far left, we see this white building, which is where we'll go next. This is part of the detention building, and this is the courtyard. The sign reads, "The detention building, constructed in 1940, consisted of 40 individual cells and an adjacent courtyard enclosed by a wall. It was in this facility that the SS carried out torture and administered camp penal measures such as flogging, confinement in dark cells, and food deprivation. The detention building also served as a prison for prominent special inmates from the German Reich and beyond. These included military, clerical, and political figures who opposed the Nazis. More than 1,000 people were murdered in the detention building courtyard. Among them, Dietrich Bonhoeffer, Wilhelm Canaris, Hans Oster, and others active in the resistance. In the courtyard is a memorial to several of the men that I just mentioned. A statue also stands in this area, which resembles a man with his knees bent and his hands covering his face. Near the detention building, at the back of this grassy area, lies the outline of where another barrack once stood, the camp brothel. The sign reads, "The camp brothel in Flossenburg was put into operation in mid-July 1943 in a specially built wooden barrack. At the direct order of Reichsfuhrer SS Heinrich Himmler, female prisoners in Flossenburg and other concentration camps were coerced into prostitution. Around 15 women were transferred from Ravensbrück concentration camp to work in the so-called Kommando Sonderbau, or special building. Those coerced into this type of forced labor found it particularly degrading. Brothel visits were part of an incentive system introduced by the SS to improve the prisoners' work performance. Only a privileged group benefited from these systems. Jews, Sinti, Roma, and prisoners from the Soviet Union were strictly excluded from visiting these special buildings. The subject of camp brothels remains a taboo until the 1990s. Out of shame and fear of stigmatization, hardly any women affected were willing to talk about it. Looking back towards the laundry building, the infirmary building once stood here. The sign reads, "In reality, the infirmary established by the SS in 1939 was not a healing facility, but a place of death. Primarily serving to isolate sick inmates in order to prevent the spread of disease, the SS generally made arbitrary decisions regarding the medical treatment of illnesses and injuries. Nonetheless, despite the appalling hygienic conditions and extremely crude means at their disposal, inmates assigned to work as doctors and nurses made every effort to treat sick fellow prisoners. Meanwhile, SS doctors used the facility to perform sadistic and barbaric medical procedures, which often resulted in death. Accordingly, many inmates tried to flee the infirmary." Let's compare this billboard photo to a present-day photo by pointing out a few things. On the left, you can see the gate that separated the SS side from the prisoner side here and here. You can see the camp kitchen and laundry buildings here and here. You can see this double fence that ran along here, separating the SS barracks from the prisoner barracks. Well, remember that road that cut through the camp? That road runs up this hill and was in the area where that fence was. Lastly, you can see that the prisoner barracks extended all the way up this hill, which is where the houses are now. Here's a wider view showing you that the barracks would have extended from here all the way to the other side. Now we'll move to the last two outdoor parts of the memorial, the Cemetery of Honor and the Valley of Death. This area is known as the Cemetery of Honor. A nearby sign said that between 1957 and 1960, a cemetery of honor for the victims of the concentration camp was laid out in the rear part of the former concentration camp, where the isolation block, the construction depot, and the disinfection building were located. The bodies of prisoners who were killed on the death marches when the camp was evacuated and were buried along the march route in local cemeteries all over Bavaria found their last resting place here. More than 5,500 people are buried in the Cemetery of Honor in individual graves. In 1995, a Jewish place of prayer was erected on the site of the former construction depot. This large area is where the Cemetery of Honor resides. This is the construction depot where a Jewish place of prayer now sits. This area down below is known as the Valley of Death, and we'll head that direction next. We're going to start near this watchtower and then go down this steep incline to this building here that you can see has a smokestack. This was the crematorium. And then from the crematorium, we'll go back up this hill to this memorial chapel. As we near the watchtower, we can look down to see the crematorium and several memorials, and then the chapel in the distance. In this view, I'm standing with the crematorium to my back and am looking up that incline towards the watchtower. So I want to give you an idea of what went on here. In this 1944 picture, you can see that there was an opening in the wall and a ramp that ran down that opening to the crematorium. The Nazis would have dead bodies loaded into carts, and then they were rolled down this track to the crematorium to be incinerated. You can see that the opening has since been filled in, but the ground where the track ran is still elevated. From this side view, you might get a better idea of how this worked. So here was the opening, and then the track ran down here to the crematorium. So next we'll move up to this top area. So the cart would be in this area and then would be pushed through this short tunnel to a ramp on the other side, going down to the crematorium. So this is the crematorium, and we'll go inside next. On the inside is the oven and an autopsy table. Prior to being incinerated, teeth were checked for any gold or silver fillings. If present, those teeth were extracted and set aside. An interesting little side note. I got to Flossenburg right when the camp opened and was the only visitor there. When I opened the door to the crematorium, I came across what I thought was a worm who was trapped inside. When I reached down to pick it up, I realized it wasn't a worm, but it was actually a little snake. It looked like it might have been injured because it was having a hard time slithering up the steps. So I ended up getting a couple of sticks and with some finagling was able to move him over to the woods nearby. Afterwards, it struck me how ironic it was to have saved a living creature from the crematorium. The two pillars that made up the original main gate into the prisoners' camp were later moved here to the entrance of the area known as the Valley of Death. The Valley of Death. In this area, the SS carried out executions and ordered the burning of bodies of dead prisoners. The ashes of about 15,000 people lie scattered or buried near the crematorium. When the first memorial was dedicated 2 years after the liberation of the concentration camp, the site was given the name Valley of Death. The chapel, which was built in view of the crematorium, presides as a Christian symbol over the valley. The pyramid of ashes, which is composed of cremated remains and earth, serves as a grave marker for all those who perished at the Flossenburg Concentration Camp. The dead are memorialized by country of origin at the Square of Nations. The number of victims recorded on the memorial in 1947 do not correspond to the current state of research. Additional commemorative markers have been added to the original installation over the years. So, out of respect, we'll pass through this area without narration so that you can reflect.